Well, I come from the property and casualty space, so I love policies, and I think it's fascinating that, yes, language has changed, and that's why you always, every year, just like every other policy, you got to shop it. The language does change, the writers, the costs, all that, just like when cyber all of a sudden was excluded, right? You always have to now have a standalone policy. People ask me, well, HIPAA's included. I'm like, yes, HIPAA is always included in your professional liability. However, if there's a cyber event, that is not going to be covered. Legal, those fees are not going to be covered. And that's why the applications are, 8, 10 pages long now just to get a cyber coverage. So yes, your point is this is untested water. This is something that is going to be very interesting. However, I don't think that's any different than Change Healthcare blowing up, everyone's first quarter by kind of leaking the biggest possible thing that you could possibly leak. And then everyone's kind of like, business as usual. So I think AI is still very new, that both sides of the providers, the payers, everyone's still trying to wrap their arms around how could I benefit from it. So I don't think we're there yet that people actually understand, well, how do I protect? It's still pedal down, that people are still saying we got to keep going to learn more, as opposed to saying, slow down, how do we actually protect in the event of failure, in my opinion.
We're both probably pretending to be attorneys here for a moment, but let's just play with that for a second. Out of curiosity, I'm curious what and again, the disclaimer for anybody listening, neither of us are attorneys, right? So don't take it, but just speaking in broad strokes here, I was just thinking about even our own business. I was like, wait a second, does our employee handbook specifically tell our staff that they can only use AI in tools that we give them? Like, otherwise, in other words, I just had this, like, my heart drop a little bit where I was like, wait a second, is it possible that somewhere in our business, somebody's using AI tools that we don't know about because they're trying to be more productive? And then that made me kind of think, as we're talking to you, is like, wait a second, should one of the low-hanging fruit for practice owners this year be like, hey, you should probably just make sure your employee handbook is kind of up to date?
It's one of the reasons why policies are supposed to be reviewed every year. People don't like doing it. It's terribly burdensome, and people don't know where to start. And just to segue to myself, I guess, that's something that we take pride in. We actually love going through policies. We update ours every single year. It's one of the things that you should have on your roadmap. It's the easiest thing to do. You carve out a week of time every, whatever it may be, second quarter, but there's a couple things that you got to do every year. And that's one of them. You got to train your staff, right? To your point, does my staff know what my standards are? You got to train your staff. And in healthcare, it's the standard. Every single employee, doesn't matter if you're the CEO or just the person, opening the front door up in the morning. You got to train your staff on this stuff. And the argument that you used to hear as well is really expensive. And that's one of the things where I take a lot of pride in saying, you know what? It shouldn't be. It should just be as affordable as anything else out there on the market. And we've done that. It's fantastic. Same thing with the reference materials. You got to go through that. And if you're just relying on something that's on a shelf somewhere, that's not good enough. You have to go through your content and really update it to reflect what you're actually performing. And then also in terms of insight, you're talking a lot about insight, and you could only do that through auditing, to actually seeing what you're doing and saying, hey, by the way, what is my marketing team doing? Have I actually measured them against what they're supposed to be doing, which is supposed to reflect what the standards are set for them? And the answer is, if that's not happening, then you really don't know what's taking place. So you gotta be proactive, instead of a lot of people that come to me, they're saying, well, this happened, how do I fix it? And the answer is, it never would have happened if we had A, B, and C. But you can't say that, right? You have to say, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to help you out. But it's that whole component of, I heard someone recently on your show say, parents don't take their kids, right, to therapy preventatively. They take them when they get hurt, right? Because you want your kid out there. You want them away from you, playing the sports in school, and you're willing to just ride it until something not great happens, because that's what parents do.
That's interesting. I probably need to I'm going to just make a note to look at our handbook, actually, now that I think about it. The reason I was thinking about this also is because as it came up in my head, I was like, wait a second. I remember at one point at PPS, I was just floating through the floor. I just wanted to see what was out there. And I remember I just happened to be eavesdropping on these two PTs were talking in the corner or something like that. And one of them says, he said something like, oh man, yeah, I just kind of like set the record button on my phone. I like hit record when I'm doing an eval. And then like, and he said, this was like when the new AI tools were out and he was like, yeah, I'm running iOS 18 beta. He's like, yeah, lately I've just been like hitting record, putting it in my pocket. And then after they leave, I just like hit the summarize button on the transcript. And then I just copy paste that into my EMR. And I thought to myself, holy cow, whoa, this is, hey, if it works, great. But, in my mind, I was thinking, But what if, like, are you actually reading that? Anyway, you're smiling, so you probably already
It's not
like
worth the
thinking
risk.
the same
It's just
thing.
not. There's
Yeah, and
so
that
many things that
practice
can go
owner,
wrong.
neither of them were practice owners, by the way, right? So that practice owner has no idea probably that this is happening.
But it doesn't have to if you have other, things in place that you've assessed. And, we've talked, I've heard many times, there's so many ways to speed up. There's scribes now. There's all these great things and tools. Technology should be helping. It should be minimizing the burden that we're doing as therapists. But you could do it in a great way. You could do it in a compliant way, and it doesn't have to be like splitting the atom. It doesn't have to be complicated.
If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and RCM works, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo.